living radiantly, it means embracing all aspects of your life and of yourself through navigating those challenges, realizing that I had to look within to find those answers.
Welcome to the Be Better broadcast. Today, we are joined by Dr. Sheetal Ajmani, who is a physician, a best-selling author, and the host of the Essential Self-Care podcast. Dr. Sheetal is also the founder of Radiant Living Institute, where she guides people to get unstuck and live radiantly again. Her unique approach combines the principles and tools of Ayurveda, yoga, mindfulness, positive psychology, and science. Through her programs, you will learn simple yet highly impactful ways to feel better, happier, and more fulfilled in your life, career, and your relationships. If you are going through any kind of challenge now in your life or in your career or business, if you are going through what you may call a life transition and you're wondering, what's next for me? How do I go from point A to point B? How can I live radiantly even through this transition? Then this conversation with Dr. Sheetal is going to be for you. She was introduced to me by Tanya MFK, who's been on the show as well. She's also a great friend. And if you love that conversation, I know you're going to love this one too. If you find any piece of value or insight or strategy, all that we ask is you share this show with just one other person who could use it as well. We're not going to play an ad. We're not going to have a sponsor come in here and interrupt your viewing experience. And all that we ask is you share the show because you are the best part of the Be Better team. And you are the reason we have grown to over 300 episodes over the past 2 years. So thank you for that. We are grateful for you. Without further ado, let's talk to Dr. Sheetal. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Brandon. Thank you for that very kind introduction. I'm excited for our chat today.
Absolutely. I'm very curious of how you came to do what you do with the Radiant Living Institute and everything that you're up to. So what would you say to those people who say, what does it mean to live radiantly?
Yeah, great question. Great question. So living radiantly. So one of the core belief as to kind of why my company is even called Radiant Living Institute is that I truly believe that a radiant life begins from within. So it really starts from within ourselves. And so often as we move through life, and especially when those challenges come up, we immediately look towards everything outside of ourselves, like all of the external circumstances. What can I change in my external environment? Is it the job, the relationship? Should I move to a new city? We immediately go to those externals to feel better. But a radiant life truly begins from within. And so this is the journey that I guide my clients on, and that is core and central to my programs, is that we actually start from you, from what's most important to you, from identifying your values, your beliefs, and your ideal life, and going from there. So we start with the inner work, and then we apply that to our external, to create our external environment in a way that aligns with our true values and priorities. And so what does living radiantly mean? I want to also cover that living radiantly, it means embracing all aspects of your life and of yourself. That means imperfections and all. That means understanding that these challenges that come into your life are simply part of your journey, and that you can hold space for the joys and the grief. You can hold space for the beauty and the really hard, icky stuff, right? And that is all part of life. So living radiantly doesn't necessarily mean smiling and being joyful all the time. It can, that's wonderful. But it also means just embracing all of those aspects of your life.
Yes, absolutely. And I know there's people listening who might say, oh, it's easier said than done to embrace the icky and to embrace those parts of me that I might not be happy with. And I see those people smiling all the time and it can't be real, right? There's got to be something going on there. And I 100% resonate with what you're talking about when it comes to starting within, because I'm 29 now, but when I was 21, I was doing very well financially. I had a great sales job, but I was very unhappy with myself, and I was unhappy with how I looked and how I felt, and money was like the only solace in my life. But even still, I was spending more than I was earning. So to everyone else, I looked like I had it all, but to myself, I was crumbling essentially. And I was looking externally. I was like, well, I'm going to find a different job with a new opportunity. I'm going to start over, and the grass is going to be greener over there. I'm going to go over to that pasture. And I had a mentor who told me the exact words that you just said in a different way. He said, you've got to work on you before you change the outside. So what was that realization for you? How did you discover that radiant living was first to look within?
Great question. You know, I think as many of us who enter this space of personal development and coaching, many of us are inspired and motivated by our own journey. And so I think, you know, a big part of it for me was going through my own challenges, personally and professionally. And through navigating those challenges, realizing that I had to look within to find those answers, to find that way through, right? One of my favorite things to share is, and I actually read this in a book by Glennon Doyle called Love Warrior, and it is that the word crisis means to sift. And so during those crisis moments, you know, it becomes really clear what's most important to you, right? And everything else just starts to kind of fall away. And part of the reason is really when you're going through that challenging situation, we almost don't even have the bandwidth, right? To deal with the drama, to deal with the toxicity, or to deal with just all of the extra stuff, right? And so we kind of let that sift away. And all of a sudden, what's really important to you becomes very evident. And I always say, and part of my programs is also that life's challenges are the greatest catalyst for self-empowerment. So I truly believe also that life's challenges don't come to us to make us feel miserable, to make us suffer, right? I actually think it's a way for us to, and an opportunity for us to dive deeper into ourselves, to grow and to heal along our own journeys. And so that's really what it was for me. You know, my first year of medical school, I discovered yoga. So I started going to yoga classes. I experienced like a peace within myself that I had never experienced before. And I was also at that time that I first heard of Ayurveda, which, if you're not familiar, Ayurveda is the ancient medical system of India. It's also a system and a framework of self-care and wellness practices, lifestyle habits, and routines to help you feel your best. Really sees all of us as completely unique individuals. So I discovered all of this my first year of medical school, and it really piqued my interest, and I knew I wanted to dive deeper into these topics. And so I completed my medical training. I continued to, in whatever way I can with my limited time, being a busy medical student, a busy resident physician, you know, engaged in some of these practices as much as I was able to learn about to help balance myself, to help myself manage the various stressors that came along the way, right? And so then since that time, that was over 2 decades ago that journey first began, right?
Okay.
And so then through various ups and downs of life, both professionally as well as personally, I continue to dive deeper into these tools. So what I bring to this is really both a professional exploration of these tools and these modalities, right? Being a physician, being really interested in the science behind all of this, and also studying these ancient traditions, as well as personally just diving deep, because you know what? That's what I needed. And I saw the power of it. And then that really drove my desire, both this personal and professional exploration of knowing firsthand what it feels like to dive deeper into these tools and practices, to dive deeper within, to then look without, right? But starting from within, that personal and professional exploration myself, knowing the science behind it, knowing firsthand how good it feels to start to integrate these tools, this is what really drives my desire to share this with others. And so, you know, now I've had the opportunity to guide so many clients, so many people going through really challenging things in their life, people going through divorce, to navigating co-parenting, to empty nest, to like the first time in 18 years their children are out of the house and figuring out like how to adjust to this new reality and maybe discover themselves again, or discover their relationship with their significant other again in a whole new way. So just all sorts of different challenges and life transitions. And these are really that opportunity that life gives us to dive deeper. I'm not saying it's comfortable all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's not.
Yeah.
But it's part of the process and it's part of the journey. And when we begin to look at it in that way, we can maybe begin to start to see some of the beauty in it as well.
Well said. That quote you mentioned, life's challenges are the greatest catalyst of self-improvement. And it's so true. And you've gone through a lot of challenges in your life. And just, you know, some that I read was you've gone through divorce, you've gone through burnout in your own career, you've experienced pain in your life. And I'm guessing that was a physical pain in your life.
Yeah.
And we could go through each one of these, but if we had to dive into one, let's take a look at your career. And just for the sake of an example, for the person who their children have left the nest and now they're looking to reinvent, or they're looking to add that spark in their relationship, and there is an element of wanting to reinvent who they are and create a new vision forward. Let's talk to that person, and we'll use your experience with burnout as a great place to start, because I'm assuming that even if the challenge may be different, then the vehicle to go from point A to point B might be very similar. So when you were facing that burnout, maybe you can paint the picture of what that looked like. When did you feel this burnout and lack of, I won't put words in your mouth, you tell me, what did this career burnout look like for you, and how did you navigate through that?
Yeah, wow. So I've actually, to be completely honest with you, I have experienced burnout in my career multiple times. Being a physician, being a pediatrician specifically, right? Working long hours, seeing and taking care of children who are going through things that no one should ever have to go through, not to mention a child, and being a source of support and information and knowledge and guidance to their parents as well. It takes a lot on a physical level, mental level, and emotional level, right? And so again, this was a journey. It really pushed me into a journey of finding self-compassion, of leaning into these tools, of leaning into gaining perspective, right? Of connecting with things that are bigger than me. So leaning into faith, leaning into spirituality, leaning into nature, right? Just different aspects of life to help gain perspective, right? In terms of the journey, kind of looking in hindsight, there was a very clear path each time that I went through a round of burnout and the divorce and the chronic pain, right? Each time with all of those transitions, there was a clear path that I was only able to identify in hindsight. And that path was this vehicle that I took. I love how you use that word vehicle, because it really was this vehicle, right? And what I mean by that is I've actually coined the term CAR, right? A CAR method. So that was a perfect segue into my CAR method. So to get anywhere from where you are, right, in the middle of that crisis, in the middle of that life transition, where everything can feel like chaos. It can feel like often in many of those situations, like your whole world just got turned upside down, right? So taking an example of my career, as you mentioned, right? This is a career that I, spent 25 years in school, right? Studying for, that I took out student loans, like all of this stuff, such an investment to then be faced with feeling burnout for doing something that I enjoy, doing something that is very meaningful to me, yet still feeling this burnout, right? It can feel like, wait, what just happened? How did this happen? Right? And so when you're in a situation, whatever situation that is, it can just feel like your world just got flipped upside down, right? And so the first part of this CAR method, right, which to get from point A to point B, I suggest that you do take a vehicle and that vehicle be a car, where C stands for clarity. First, it's just clearing through some of that chaos, right? Finding some clarity. And, you know, a big part of it for everyone who's listening right now, to offer just kind of one sort of little nugget that you can take to identify if you are going through a challenging situation right now, to identify that clarity. I would start with just naming it, naming what you're going through. Because so often it can just, the entire situation, the entire experience can get so jumbled up in your mind, and we can get so lost in our thoughts up there. And there's actually great power to just naming it. Yeah. I'm going through a divorce. This is really hard. I'm experiencing burnout. I never thought I'd experience it. This is really hard, but I have a name for it now, right? Yeah. What that does, one thing that does is it helps create space between you and the situation. It helps create space between you and the crisis, right? So you are not the burnout. You are not the divorce. You are not the chronic pain. You are not the health diagnosis. It is something you are experiencing. It is something that you're going through. And when you name it, you start to create some of that space, right? So the first step is clarity, right? Then the next step, and I actually guide people through a much more detailed process through that when I'm working with clients, but this is just a great place for anyone listening to start. I really want to make sure that you're getting those nuggets, right? Yep. And so the next step is acceptance, right? So once we have some clarity, once we've like cleared through some of that chaos, it's really about making sense of the now. So now what do we do, right? You can only create change or transformation from where you are, right? So this is where often I work with clients in cultivating that mind-body connection, working with things like movement, mindful eating, that sort of thing, because our body is always sending us signals. And it's up to us to pay attention and to listen to those signals, right? And so really cultivating that mind-body connection as a way to help ground yourself into the present moment, ground yourself into your current reality, because it's only from that place that transformation can begin to occur, right? And then the R in the CAR, so we have C for clarity, A for acceptance, the R is rebuilding. This is where we actually take all of that information and then begin to look at our external environment and see what our plan of action is going to be. What sort of intentional changes with this newfound awareness and clarity and acceptance, what sort of intentional changes can we make from here? So that you're no longer reacting to the situation. You're no longer reacting to the crisis, but you are responding to it with intention, awareness, and alignment.
Let me ask you a question. So let's talk about, I love the CAR method, by the way, and I want to dive specifically into that idea of the plan of action. So we've become clear of what the problem is. We have accepted it and have taken steps into the idea of the mind-body connection, which we could talk about a whole episode on what that is. And I definitely want to dive into a few aspects of it. But that idea of next steps, what do you believe must happen first? Do you believe that we should paint a vision for what we want and then place action steps behind that vision? Or do you believe that placing the action steps and the routines and the rituals of Ayurveda even comes before having the ultimate vision painted out? What comes first, the chicken or the egg?
Great question. And that very much is like a chicken or egg situation, right? Because honestly, the fact is, if you start with either one of those, you will see progress. Okay, you will. Now, within my specific method, what I start with, in that clarity piece, we actually start to hit on both of those. We start to hit on creating that vision, as well as, and this is when I'm guiding people through my signature 6-step program called Reclaim Your Radiance, which is basically the CAR method. And then I've broken down each of those phases, the C, the A, and the R, into 2 additional steps. So then that becomes my 6-step signature method in Reclaim Your Radiance. So actually what you just mentioned of routines, as well as creating the vision, I include both of those in that clarity piece when I'm working with clients one-on-one or through my group program. And so what I do is I start with the clarity piece, and kind of what I break that down to is taking inventory, what I call taking inventory, and then creating empowering daily routines. So let me explain this a little bit.
Okay.
So under taking inventory, you are, yes, identifying the situation that you're going through right now. You're identifying kind of different aspects of what you're experiencing right now. And then you're also starting to identify what your ideal vision looks like.
Okay.
You're starting to get some clarity of that as well. So you're starting to get clarity of like what your point A is and what your point B is, right? Of where you want to go, where you're heading. And so this idea of taking inventory, that's typically something we often will do kind of in a point in time, right? That may be once a year, it may be once a quarter, it may be just kind of whenever you're going through a major transition. Although I would, once you learn this method, I would definitely advise scheduling consistent periods of time to take inventory, to kind of go through this process of looking at kind of where is my life right now? Is that where I want it to be? Where do I want it to be? That sort of thing.
How often do you do that personally?
Personally, I do it on a kind of more in-depth scale, definitely once a year, usually around my birthday, which is also around the new year. So that timing just works out great. But then I also do, I do it every quarter on an almost as in-depth level as every year. And then I do it every month So I kind of do it in smaller pieces more frequently, and I do kind of a bigger scale one once a year.
And how have you found that helps you when it comes to the direction that you're headed now, since you've taken on this ritual?
Yeah, it's absolutely profound. And what I will say as well, and this came from my own experience, and I lead a workshop every new year as well called Create Your Radiant Year, where I guide people through kind of my New Year's process as well. And, it's very interesting because it's helpful to have kind of a direction that we're heading, right? Having that clarity is really helpful. And what I do in my programs also is, and this comes a lot from my own experience too, right? I've had experiences where I've created this beautiful vision and picture, and you know what? My world got completely flipped upside down, and things ended up being exactly the opposite as I would have expected it to be. Mm-hmm. And that's happened before, right? Because life is unpredictable, life is uncertain. And so you can plan, you can have this vision, you know where you're heading, right? And in my New Year's process, what I do is, we create that vision, we create those goals. And then you know what we do? We look at and we convert those into affirmations. Because what's more important, and this is again, part of that process of a radiant life starts from within. What's more important is not those goals. What's more important is who you become through that process.
Interesting.
Who are you becoming on that journey? So when we set our focus on the affirmations, right? You take those goals, right? And this is what I do in my New Year's workshop, is we make this list of goals, we chunk them together into specific categories, and then we create an affirmation. Well, first you identify your why for that category. Why is it even important to you? From there, you create your affirmation, right? By achieving these goals, right? What is my why behind that? Why is it important to me to achieve these goals? Often it's actually because of who you want to become through that process.
Yeah.
So let's go right there. Who do you want to become?
That's a big
affirm
question.
That, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I walk you through it, and we go through it in bite-sized chunks. But when you focus on that, these challenges, these obstacles can come in, right? These unexpected things. Maybe you don't meet all of those goals in the time frame that you allotted or set out for yourself. But who did you become in the process? Were you still able to act and respond to those situations in alignment with who you are at the core, with your values? Like, that's more important. And then celebrate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because goals will change when those hardships come in, but who you want to become a lot of the time will stay consistent, even if those goals change. You've heard the quote, when you make a plan, God laughs, right? because
Exactly.
things are always going to change. So people say, why look ahead if things are going to change anyway? Well, having that plan is great, especially if you take it to the point that you just mentioned of writing down who do you want to become as a result of these goals? What's really the overarching why behind this? That's powerful. So for that person listening
Yeah.
who's like, wow, this has really inspired me to think about my next steps. What's my goal? But even on top of that, who do I want to become? And then write down some affirmations on top of that, like I am this, I will this. Maybe you write everything in the present tense. Well, let me ask you, when it comes to these affirmations, what are maybe a couple examples that you've seen or use yourself or have seen with clients that they will use, and how do you use your affirmations?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I do is I end up through this whole New Year's workshop plan that I do. What I do is I end up having kind of a list of the different categories, the affirmation on top, and then the specific bolded, like I printed out bold, the affirmation on top of that chunk in that category. And then I have all the goals underneath it. So those goals are all just like options of how to's. That's how I see it. There's options of how to achieve my affirmation, right? So for example, one that I've used before is I create joyful experiences for my friends and family.
Cool.
So that was just, I had a list of kind of what I wanted to do that year. And a category of that list involved, planning certain types of activities and trips and travel and experiences with my family and friends, because that's really important to me. But I'll give you a very specific example. I did this the year that the pandemic started in 2020. January, I made this list. I was like, I want to go to the Netherlands for the Tulip Festival with my family.
Yeah.
That was a very specific thing that was on my list. Like I really wanted to do that, right? The Tulip Festival is usually around April, and I've never been, and I thought that would be a really cool experience. And March, the world went on lockdown. March 2020, right? So that was obviously not happening, right? And I had to, because I knew what my true goal with that was, it was to create joyful experiences with my family and friends.
Yeah.
So now I could just change the how, right? Now I got to get creative with ways that I could continue even in the middle of the world being on lockdown, find creative ways to create joyful experiences with my family. And we did. I had never really FaceTimed with my family before. It just wasn't, I would talk to them on the phone. I never really FaceTimed with them. All of a sudden, we were FaceTiming each other almost every day. And, it was, so it opened up just different experiences, different ways to continue to meet that affirmation, to continue to meet this part of myself and my life that was really important to me that I wanted to continue to cultivate more of.
Yes. Because rather than you not being able to go on that trip and you looking and saying, well, now I'm disappointed because I wasn't able to fulfill this goal for my family, you were able to then look right above it at the affirmation of who you are, someone who creates great experiences, and then ask the powerful question, well, how else can I accomplish and fulfill this state of being? And the answer was thinking outside the box, getting on FaceTime, spending more time with them in different ways. So really what you did, it sounds like, is you gave yourself more options in order to fulfill that goal. And at the same time, giving yourself grace, which is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we can get so stuck onto kind of these goals and these steps sort of along the way, right? But when you focus more on, well, these are just options of ways to get there, right?
Yeah.
But continuing to reconnect with your why, right? And what I feel like, more importantly, who you want to become through that process. What qualities do you want to cultivate more of within your life and within yourself?
Absolutely. Let's talk about the specific tools now to bring these visions and plans into fruition. A lot of these tools that you have in the toolbox are physical tools. So they include what you mentioned about the mind-body connection. You've got yoga, you've got Ayurveda, you've got meditation. Talk to me about the connection for those who may have heard about the mind-body connection, but how are the two connected? Because they may say, well, it's an intellectual exercise to write down what my vision is, write down what my plan is. How is my body involved with something that my brain is taking the reins on?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's all connected. It's all connected. Our physical, our mental, our emotional, it is all connected, right? And so yeah, the first part of the process, we're, getting the clarity, doing the vision, and we did go on a bit of a digression. So I didn't get to the part of like the daily routines, but that's the second step under clarity, is creating empowering daily routines so that you're also tapping into that clarity on a regular basis. So that's a step that I walk clients through as well. But then we move into the acceptance phase, which I really look at cultivating that mind-body connection, right? Why? So as I mentioned earlier, your body is always sending you signals, right? And this is something we talk about in Ayurveda. This is something I've experienced myself. You may have as well, right? Maybe you notice like a little minor ache or pain, right? And then you ignore it because you just have so much work to do, or there's just other responsibilities. So you just ignore it, whatever, it'll go away, right? What happens? Does it go away?
No.
Usually not. It gets louder, right? It gets louder until you pay attention. So this is so valuable, right? Because we spend so much time in our mind that we don't pay attention to. We're conditioned not to pay attention to our body's signals. We're conditioned to just push through, right? But when you do start to pay attention to your body's signals, you're able to pick up on these cues a little bit sooner. You see, through those signals, that is really your inner voice talking to you. That's powerful, right? I mean, think of it as like an example would be like your gut instinct, right? When someone asks you to do something, or you meet someone new and you just get this like vibe or this gut instinct about, whether you should, go into business with this person or say yes to this opportunity or no, right? Like it's a very true thing. So, I mean, although it can maybe sound a little bit abstract, like it's very practical. And I think we've all experienced this, that gut instinct. But sometimes or often we will use our mind to talk ourselves out of that. Right? But if we pay attention, and that's when kind of those signals then start to get louder and louder until we pay attention, right? And that can show up in so many different ways. It can show up in terms of physical symptoms. It can show up as insomnia. It can show up as something just not working out the way that you expected to, right? It can show up in so many different ways. But when we begin to cultivate that mind-body connection, you begin to cultivate that awareness. That body awareness, so that you can start to tune in. And so these are all tools, right? Like a lot of the tools that you mentioned that I incorporate, things like the meditation, things like the mindfulness, things like the yoga. These are all just tools. And actually, in my 6-step program, the section about movement, I specifically call it mindful movement, even though yoga is a form of mindful movement that is part of my daily practice personally. There are so many different types of movement and mind-body practices that you can engage in. Like dance is a mind-body practice. Tai Chi, Qigong, right? There's so many. It's just kind of what resonates with you. And that's also very unique about the approach that I take when I work with people, whether it's one-on-one, my group program, or the self-paced. In all of those versions of my program, I am walking you through to help you create the plan that works best for you. So this is something that's talked about in Ayurveda and that I strongly believe in as well, which is that we are all completely unique. So yoga might resonate with me, but maybe Tai Chi resonates more with you. Right. And so, or maybe going out for walks in nature, right? Or maybe a combination of that, right? So I think it's really important to identify what resonates with you the most, because that is what is most likely going to, first of all, it's going to be easiest for you to implement because it resonates with you. And second, it'll be more likely to stay as a habit. Right. Yeah. And so I really walk people through a process of explaining these concepts, introducing these modalities, but then really helping you to build your own toolbox.
Yes. So let me ask, is there a tool in that toolbox that you have found through working with your clients that has been universal? And when I ask that, I mean, is there one self-care tip in that toolbox that everyone listening could implement and get immediate positive results from that you've found?
100%.
And what is that?
Taking time daily to connect with yourself, whatever that looks like for you. And it doesn't have to be half an hour, an hour. It can if you have the time for it. But I know we're all really busy. If it's even a minute, you will notice a difference. And I have seen this, and I have seen this in my clients. They've come back to me and they've said, I didn't think it was possible, but you're right. It took only 2 minutes and I felt so much better. And I felt so much better for the rest of the day.
Connect with yourself.
So connect with yourself, whatever that looks like, whether that is taking a couple minutes in the morning while you sip on your coffee or tea to just be, to not also scroll social media or check your email, whether it is taking a walk around the block in your neighborhood to just be, to get some movement in, to look at the nature around you, look at the trees, look at the gardens, look at the flowers around you, whether it is having a seated formal meditation practice, right? Whatever it is for you, take at least a moment on a regular basis, ideally daily, but some sort of a regular basis to connect with yourself.
That's beautiful. As you say that, I think of things that I do on a daily basis. Like for me, I have my guitar in my living room. So if I have a moment of downtime, I'll pick up that guitar and immediately I'm in a different state of mind and I feel better. I feel more connected. Now that you say that, that's a great word to use.
Yeah, I love that. And what like that music, it's getting you to use different parts of your brain, different parts of your mind. Like it's getting you into a different state on a very physical level, physiological level as well. And I also love about what you shared is that you just keep your guitar in your living room. I often, when I'm guiding people to create these new habits and routines, because let's face it, creating a new habit can be challenging, but that's why I have a very systematic process of guiding you through that. And one of those that I'll often use is if it is something that involves some sort of equipment, like a yoga mat or a guitar or a ukulele. I have a ukulele in my apartment. Cool. And so, whatever it is, placing it, like creating those visual cues for yourself. So like you have that in your guitar. I have my yoga mat always set up kind of in a certain place in my home because that's my cue. I do that every morning, right? Yes. So whether that's when you go to bed, you set up, like, let's just say you do a yoga practice or a meditation practice in the morning, you set up your meditation cushion or your yoga mat so that it's just there for you. When you wake up, you have this visual cue. Oh yeah, that's what I was going to do this morning.
Yes, you make it easy for yourself and accessible for yourself. Just so you look over and it's there. You don't have to, just like when they say when you are just starting a new gym routine and you're just starting to get back into fitness, have your clothes ready the night before so that when you walk out into your living room or wherever, your clothes are right there. They're ready for you to change into. You don't have to hunt the bedroom while your spouse is sleeping, pet's sleeping, baby's sleeping, whatever it may be. Make it easy for yourself to follow through. I love that.
Absolutely.
So I'd like to rapid fire real quick with you, just a few things, because I want to talk about your program, but you've got a lot of other things that are going on too that I just want to ask very quickly. What is the name of your podcast?
Yeah, Essential Self-Care. And the whole concept of that is to make self-care accessible to us in our busy lives, right? That self-care, it doesn't have to be going to get that hour-long massage or going to that hour-and-a-half yoga class and commuting each way as well, right? It can be. And certainly if you're in Virginia, come to one of my yoga classes, right? But it doesn't have to be, right? And we put so much pressure on ourselves and we make ourselves feel guilty for not doing these things. So that's the whole point of the Essential Self-Care podcast. It is these bite-sized episodes. Each episode is usually between 10 to 20 minutes long, so you can really fit it into your day, and it gives you really practical tools and modalities to start building your toolbox. I also have guests come on and share their self-care story as well, just to offer some inspiration. People who have gone through challenging situations and what sort of self-care tools they leaned on in those situations to help them get through.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that format. Yeah, there's a link in the description, guys, to go check out Essential Self-Care to get even more of these ideas that we're talking about right now, just in more depth on each one. What is the name of your book?
Yeah, so I co-authored an Amazon best-selling book called Doctoring Better. And so I partnered with 10 other physician coaches, female physician coaches, and we share a bit about our journeys in medicine and how that also led us to explore different ways to help people through coaching or publishing, or different ways that we have used our journeys in medicine to now also serve and help people in other ways.
That's amazing. There's a link in the description to that too, for those who are interested in checking that out, if it makes sense for you. Now, the overarching question to all of that is, you are giant on maintaining your relationships. You have your career as a pediatrician. Which, by the way, that would be enough. Like that right there, like you do that, amazing. Well respected in the community, making a giant difference for children, for the family of those children. You've got your business that includes a podcast, a book. It includes your program, which I want to talk about, Reclaim Your Radiance, which we have talked a bit about, but I want to ask you more questions on that. And then you have this mission. Like you have all these different things that you're working on. What is your affirmation that all of those things are listed under? And you give yoga classes, like you have so many different things going on. I have many questions of how you're able to balance all those things, but what is your overarching affirmation that all those things are listed under? I guess the question is, why are you doing all those different things?
It's my soul's calling. I feel called to do all of these things. And I can't not do it.
What happens if you're not doing it? Is it like an emotion? What is that?
Yeah, I feel like something is missing.
And when did you discover that calling? Was it always apparent? Did it become apparent at a certain part of your life?
I think it was when I first discovered, there were pieces of it. Like, it's really interesting. So I'm working on writing another book right now.
Cool.
And so what's really neat is it's giving me this opportunity. I've always been really into writing. So I've written like these just different like blogs and articles and just things that I've even never shown the world. I've just written for myself over the years. And it's been interesting because as I'm in this process currently of writing this new book, I'm reviewing all of that. And it's so interesting because it gives me an opportunity to look back and see that there were these nuggets throughout from childhood of all these little pieces, right? And I never really knew how they were going to all come together. And, you know, the way that they've all come together right now, that might not be the end of it either, right? Like we're all on this journey where things are continually evolving. So again, the how, it might look different 5 years from now, 10 years from now, even a few months from now. And that's totally fine, right? But there's something about this work, specifically, yeah, there's just something about this work that is part of my unique life purpose. And, you know, something I alluded briefly to this earlier, that Ayurveda sees us all as unique. And when I was talking about that earlier, that I was talking about it in reference to like these specific tools and modalities that we use for our self-care may be unique to each of us individually. But part of that also, Ayurveda says that we were each born with a very specific, unique constitution, is the word. Basically, a set of qualities that's completely unique to you. And that's why, and what I love about this is it really celebrates our unique individuality, our unique strengths, and perhaps perceived weaknesses. Mm-hmm. But really, all of that, I truly believe, is for you to fulfill your unique purpose in the world. And so that's why it might look different than what it looks like for your significant other. It might look different than what it looks like for your best friend. And that's why there might not be, in the kind of the wellness world and sort of self-care world, and you can hear all these tools and modalities, and sometimes we can be hard on ourselves and be like, well, everyone says I should, drink juice in the morning, or I'm just pulling out an example, right? And then you can make yourself feel bad about not doing it. Or everyone says I should try a yoga class, but I just can't seem to get there. And then we can make ourselves feel bad about it. But like, maybe that's not it for you.
Yeah.
And maybe that's okay. And maybe the thing that is it for you is it for a specific reason and a specific purpose. And I truly believe that. And so kind of to go back to your question, I realize I tend to kind of go on these digressions of just where I feel inspired, but it really is my soul's calling.
I love how you were able to go deeper into that. A lot of people say I have a calling, it's what I'm here to do. And you were able to put words to this essence of, you were born with this, as you called, constitution. You were born with these skills and strengths. And it sounds to me like everything we talked to up until this point helps you to become more aware of what that calling is. So for those people, and the reason I ask you that is because like me, now I have the show and I have my book and I have what I do professionally, but I had no idea that that would be a part of my life until I started practicing these self-care routines and rituals and started diving into the mind-body experience. One of the first things I did was focus on my health. And when I focused on my health and my physical body, and like what you mentioned is mindful eating, that's when everything else started to change. And at that point is when I began to become more aware. When, like you said, I started to give that time to myself in the morning and throughout the day to be more connected. And then I started to realize, wow, I'm really good at this. I find that I am more emotionally charged in a positive way when I am partaking in this activity. So that awareness has led me to where I am. And it sounds like that awareness for you has led you to exactly where you are and where you're meant to be.
Yeah, I love that. And it's a journey for anyone listening. Like, my journey personally has had its ups and downs. Really great ups and really low downs. And it's a journey, and it's a journey of, what I'm so passionate about with Radiant Living is helping, guiding people to hear their inner voice and to trust it and to follow that. And that's what my book is about, that I'm writing right now, that I'm working on right now. It's a big goal, right? Yeah. And we can so often even hear that inner voice, but get lost and caught up in the shoulds and the expectations of what we think life is supposed to look like. But it's really tuning into that awareness. And, you mentioned for you, it started with kind of taking care of your body and your health. And I had mentioned earlier also that it's all related, right? The mental, the emotional, the physical. So really, for anyone listening, also just kind of pick one area and start working on it, because it has this ripple effect into the other areas, because it really is all connected, right? Yeah. So whichever area of, say, wellness or self-care resonates with you the most, just pick one and start working on it, because that will overflow and have this ripple effect into other areas. And then another thing that you mentioned that I really love is that you've been able to now, through cultivating that awareness, also notice your energy, right? Like when I do this thing, is that giving me energy? Do I feel more energized, or is it draining my energy? Do I feel depleted, right? And that can be a great signal for you. But tuning into energy can sometimes be a bit more subtle, right? So that's where taking time to engage in some of these practices, these habits, these routines to really cultivate that awareness can be helpful. But I think that is like your biggest sign of like what it is for you. Like, because because I mentioned this word, these terms, soul's calling and life purpose. And I realized that those words maybe, they're really powerful, but we can also put a lot of pressure on ourselves to like figure it out.
Yes.
And you don't have to, like, just walk one step in front of the other, keep going on this journey, continue to cultivate this awareness, and it will unfold for you. Like, it truly will just unfold for you. And again, when I say unfold for you, I'm not saying that each step is going to be easy. That's not even part of living radiantly. So to come full circle, so it's kind of the definition of living radiantly. It's embracing all of it. It's embracing the joys, the great stuff, the stuff that feels good, and embracing the stuff that feels hard and challenging, knowing that all of that is guiding you on your journey, on your specific journey.
Powerful. I love it. And I love how we circled back to what is living in radiance. So let's talk about Reclaim Your Radiance, which is your 6-module program. And there's several different formats of this program. And I'd like to ask you, what does it look like when someone goes through this program? And you already mentioned that it encompasses the vehicle to go from point A to point B, which is your CAR, acronym CAR. And each of the 6 modules is each of those letters, but 2 modules for each one. But you'll explain it better than me. So tell me, what is Reclaim Your Radiance and who is it for?
Yeah, absolutely. So Reclaim Your Radiance, as you mentioned, it is my 6-module program. There are a few different ways to go through it. I really am so proud of this program. And I say that because I'm proud of the results that my clients have as they go through this program. It's a really powerful program. I've really taken all of the stuff that we've talked about today, that is really an accumulation of over 2 decades of this personal and professional exploration of Eastern and Western modalities of healing and wellness and recovery and self-care and navigating challenges, of navigating grief, to come to the other side, to find the joy within it, to really rebuild your life, right? So that is the overarching purpose and intention of this program, to really help you reclaim your radiance, to feel radiant again. And so this is the process and the journey that I guide people through. It is available in a few different formats. So there's a self-paced version if you prefer to go through it on your own. I do run a group cohort a few times a year. So that's an option as well, where you can do it alongside community, or the other option is working with me one-on-one through that program. The results that I've seen clients get, even through going through the introduction module, so even before lesson 1, has been powerful.
Wow. Give me a taste of what those look like. Just a couple things.
Yeah. So of understanding, of gaining greater kind of clarity and context of the life challenge that you're going through, of how that helps you really discover the diamond and the radiant within yourself. Right. And so it's just so powerful. We go into some of these Ayurvedic concepts, all even in the introduction module. Yeah. So it's really powerful, really, really powerful process. And what I'm proudest of the most is that clients have come back to me months and years later and told me that they are still using the tools that they learned through my program. Wow. That they tell me the ways that it has changed their life for the better, finding greater happiness, improving their relationships, finding greater fulfillment in their life and their career. And that's just honestly what gets me so excited about this program and sharing this program with the world. Because I know we've all had that experience of kind of going through a program, and then like a week or 2 later, or a few months later, you're back where you started. And so the fact that, my clients come back to me months and years later telling me how powerful the program still is for them in their lives, it just warms my heart. So That's a bit about Reclaim Your Radiance.
I love it. Guys, for you to check out more information, there is a link in the description to Reclaim Your Radiance. It'll be the first link there that you'll find. Dr. Sheetal, this has been an amazing conversation. And I know that there's going to be a lot of people who are like, I need more of this. And for those people, you can go check out Dr. Sheetal's podcast, Essential Self-Care. And for those who it makes sense for, Doctoring Better, and your next book that comes out, which is going to be amazing. And I'm sure that's a lot of that is still in the works. So that'll be a surprise for everyone. Yeah. But for those who want to stay up to date with all that you're doing with your new book and everything else, where can people follow you? Where's the best place?
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is radiantlivinginstitute.com. And then I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram at Sheetal Ajmani, MD. So that's my first and last name, MD. I also have a free guidebook on my website at radiantlivinginstitute.com that goes over these 6 steps. It's called 6 Simple Yet Powerful Steps to Create Your Radiant Life. So if you're just looking for a place to get started, kind of a next place to go from here, that's a great place to get started.
Amazing. Super cool. Links are in the description. And Sheetal, this was a pleasure. Thank you for joining the broadcast. And I know it's going to help a lot of people. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me here. I really enjoyed our conversation today.
We covered a lot. We talked about the vehicle to go from point A to point B. We talked about practical steps and actions that you can take today in order to feel better, in order to cultivate that mind-body connection. We talked about how to create a vision, what goals look like, what comes first, the routines, the goals. We went over a lot. And depending on where you are in your own unique journey, and the discovering of your calling, I know that there will be one of those different things that will have been most helpful for you. So I sure hope that that is the case. Be sure to go check out Essential Self-Care, which is Sheetal's podcast, where you can dive more into these principles, as well as check out the description and go read about Reclaim Your Radiance. And even better, sign up, because you heard about some of the success stories that the doctor has had with her clients over the past 2 decades of the work that she has done. And that's the name of the game. I hope that you took away something from this conversation. If you did, all that we ask is you share this show with just one other person who could use it as well. You are the best part of the Be Better team, and we have grown because of you. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until we talk again next time, continue to be better.